Should you wait to play Satisfactory before 1.0 comes out? A question that has popped up quite a few times the last couple of days, which might be sort of tricky to sort of like answer for everyone since there's not too much information on sort of what's happening with 1.0. But today, I hope to give you a little bit of clarity on this topic. So in this video, I'm going to be addressing some of the changes we made in 1.0 that will affect existing factories. We've made changes to nodes in the world. There's been rebalancing of, existing recipes, and I have some, general information regarding like progression of existing save files. So hopefully that will be very insightful for you all. Before we get into that though, I kind of want to talk about a few things first. So I know a lot of you are asking for a release date for 1.0, and I can only really say that, we'll give you a release date when we're ready to give you a release date. A lot of stuff needs to sort of come together for us to be comfortable with revealing any potential dates. So that's sort of why we're keeping it a little bit more under wraps this time around. It won't be like a shadow drop or anything like that though. So, you'll all be notified well in advance. So yeah, just hold out a little bit more, okay? Stay strong, okay? Let's talk about how we're messing up your factories, okay? Let's go. So we've made a lot of changes to nodes on the map, okay? There's a lot of new nodes on the map, but there's also been alterations to a lot of existing nodes. Very probably not fun to hear, but here we are, okay? Some have been moved, some have changed purity, and some are straight up gone, actually. These are changes we've been meaning to make for a long time, but we decided to wait until now not to cause too many headaches for everyone leading up to now. So it's better to do it all at the end of early access rather than continuously. I'm going to address some that we think will affect most people. Quick trigger warning though, a lot of the nodes that I'm about to talk about are in the vicinity of the Northern Forest. Okay, so sit down, okay? And pause the video if you need to take a breather, okay? Yeah, let's dive into it. So to start it off, let's talk about sulfur, caterium, and quartz. So up near the western northern forest, these resources are quite condensed. And to not make this area too resource dense and make players want to expand away, some of these nodes have been moved, had changes to their purities, or are, straight up yeeted from the game. So there's a cluster of 3 sulfur nodes in the northwestern northern forest. 2 have been altered. Instead of 2 normal nodes and 1 impure node, there are now only 2 impure nodes. A couple of somewhat centralized normal nodes were also removed from the northeastern snake tree forest and southwestern swamp. And we have instead added several nodes of all purities towards the edges of the map. The biggest addition to sulfur is a cluster of 3 nodes in the southern edge of the southern forest. 1 impure, 1 normal, and 1 pure. Caterium has largely been kept the same, moving back to the northwestern northern forest. The pure node up there has been removed, and the normal node hanging out there has been slightly altered in location within the biome. The only other removals of caterium are in the western edge of jungle spires, southeastern desert canyons, and northwestern swamp. Replacing the normal node in the swamp is another cluster of 3 in roughly the same location, consisting of 1 pure node and 2 normal ones. So when it comes to quartz, the Titan Forest was kind of unhinged. There were way too many quartz nodes there, so some of them have been deleted. Replacing those in roughly the same location is 1 pure node and 2 normals. 2 pure nodes at the northwestern edge of the northern forest are also gone, replaced by 2 impure ones in the same biome but more centralized at the northern border, and another cluster of 3, this time in the southern forest, consisting of 1 pure, 1 normal, and 1 impure node. There have also been changes to purities to other nodes for all 3 materials. While I'm not sure it's worth going through each one here, it's worth noting that most of these involve nodes being nerfed from normal purity down to impure. Next, let's talk about coal, okay? So the only changes here affecting current factories are the removal of 3 nodes, 1 pure node in, you guessed it, the western northern forest, as well as 2 normal nodes in the eastern dune forest, around the coin tree forest. In their places, a cluster of 4 nodes have been added to the very northwestern of the rocky desert, a couple in the jungle spires, and finally a metric shit ton of coal is replacing the 2 normal nodes in the dune forest. And to top it off, we've finally given the sprinkle treatment to iron, copper, and limestone to large sections of the map. Since most of these are completely new rather than moved, I won't go into details, but just know that the map has indeed been sprinkled. In iron's case, actually, however, it's worth mentioning that 2 normal nodes in the southeastern Titan Forest have been removed, as well as 1 on the edge of the Titan Flats, replaced with a cluster of 3 normals in between these locations. Finally, I want to talk about geysers, okay? Actually, nothing was removed for geysers. Instead, a bunch of them were added. We've been meaning to do this for a while now, and here we finally are.
Hello, what's up? My name is not Snoot, but I would like to note a quick couple of last minute things happening to uranium in 1.0 on top of everything else we just mentioned. In the swamp area, currently in the live game, we have 1 normal node of uranium that is being changed in 1.0 from normal down to impure. Oops. On top of that, we're also adding 1 impure node of uranium to the Dune Desert Plateau area. Have fun!
So, to summarize, it might sound like we've nerfed and removed many nodes, but there are overall more nodes of every type on the map in 1.0. They're just like a little bit more spread out, sort of. They might logistically be trickier to utilize now, but there are more resources to exploit in general. We'll provide more detailed maps in the description, so do check that out if you want to learn more. So in 1.0, you're going to be seeing some rebalancing of existing recipes. A big change we've made is how players will interact with supercomputers. So supercomputers will no longer be part of the Caterium MAM tree, and they will no longer be needed to make programmable splitters or geothermal generators. So programmable splitters will instead need high-speed connectors, and geothermals will require AI limiters. Hopefully with this change, geothermal power will become much more viable in the early game and make use of all those new geysers that we've added.
Actually, there seem to have been some changes made yesterday, which now makes the programmable splitter use AI limiters instead of high-speed connectors, as well as the geothermal generator use high-speed connectors instead of AI limiters. So, you know, just a little last-minute switcheroo, but hey, at least they are both still free from supercomputer jail.
Up till now, you had to work through almost all progression in terms of phases and tiers to reach some of the fun stuff you could utilize, you know, when you're sort of working on your late game factories. However, that fun stuff could then not be used for progression because your progress would be complete at that point. So we've done some switcheroos to make sure that you have access to some of the like handy tools before you reach the end game, so you can sort of play around with them faster and, you know, be more accustomed with them before the very end. One example of this is the gas mask, which is now unlocked in the Mycelia MAM tree instead of in tier 5. So if you want to get to explore in earlier, this is gonna be possible. You will be able to acquire the jetpack right as you enter tier 5 now, rather than needing oil processing completed first. Logistics Mark IV now include the truck instead of the fuel generator, which was instead moved to its own milestone. But perhaps one of the biggest changes is that trains and fuel generators no longer require computers or heavy modular frames to be unlocked, making them both accessible even before you build your first manufacturer. So this means that indeed now you can use trains to aid in the automation of computers and heavy modular frames. On top of all that, heavy modular frames are no longer used for any buildings in tiers 5 and early 6, while computers are not used for early tier 6 and should instead be focused on for unlocking stuff in tier 7. Also, circuit boards and electromagnetic control rods are no longer used when constructing buildings or unlock costs at all, actually. So let's talk about computers and heavy modular frames themselves, okay? So I come bringing sad news, unfortunately, everyone, okay? So very sorry to say this, but in 1.0, computers will no longer require screws to be built. Oh, sad times. This falls in line with making the manufacturer a less daunting building when you start using it, as computers will now only require 3 parts to automate instead of 4. However, we did double the usage of computers that are already used as an active ingredient in other recipes to sort of balance the relaxation of this recipe. For heavy modular frames, the biggest change is probably a rework to make them require nice, even numbers. So this has been done by increasing the amount of steel pipes and screws needed, but also relaxing the materials needed to make encased industrial beams by quite a bit actually. So encased industrial beams will now require much more concrete than steel beams, which relaxes the need for steel, while limestone is available in abundance. The goal with the changes to both encased industrial beams and heavy modular frames is that the recipes simply synergize like a lot more now. Next thing I want to talk about is fuel generators, okay? One change we've made to fuel generators is that they will now produce 250 megawatts of power instead of the current 150 megawatts, while still requiring the same amounts of all types of fuel. This means that you need less buildings in order to produce the same amount of power you are doing today. So either get to deleting some of those extra fuel gens, or you can, underclock all of them, and you should be Gucci. This change was made so that fuel generators weren't completely overshadowed by the addition of nuclear later on. There are a couple of more minor recipe changes that we're still sort of tweaking with, that you'll sort of have to explore yourself 1.0 drops, but these are sort of the heavy hitters and the ones that should affect your existing factories the most. So with this information, hopefully you'll have a bit more to go on, whether you'll want to reconfigure your existing factories, or if maybe it's time to start a new 1.0 drops. One final bit of info I'd like to share is about progression and the story. So if you choose to continue your save file, you will need to redo some of the unlocks that you already have, as things have changed around in the tiers and the MAM. Milestones are sort of new, and that will sort of make it so you need to unlock them again, essentially. And it might not be obvious like which ones you need to unlock again and stuff like that. There will also be story triggers that won't trigger properly on current saves. And it's nothing that, won't stop you from completing the game or anything, but you will miss out on some of these aspects. That said, if you don't care about the story and just want to grind on and complete the game and are okay with fixing up your factories, you should be fine. But for everyone else, if you do want to experience the story elements properly, we'd recommend starting over 1.0 drops to get sort of the full progression experience. All right, that's it. Hopefully this gives you a little bit more insight in preparation for 1.0. Let me know in the comments, whether you plan to restart from the very beginning again, or if you're gonna keep chugging on. So thanks for watching, everybody. See ya.